So, keeping in mind competition, do you want to wait a minute or do you want to get started?
I think we should just start and then we can open it up and we'll take the time that we need. Russ and I talked before this and we're anticipating a smaller turnout today than we would normally hope to expect. So I'm very happy that you all are here. Thank you for being here.
All right.
We're going to follow a similar format to last time. And I will talk no more than 10 minutes. So that it leaves us a good chunk of time for questions and answers and conversation. So Russ, can you set the timer for me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we talked about this last time, but really the purpose of these lunches are just an opportunity for me to engage. Another way for me to engage with the community. Engagement is one of my 3 priorities. And this is just another one of those opportunities to do that. It's also a way for me, another way to communicate updates that are happening across the district. And really, I think the most important thing is an opportunity for open conversation about BSD-wide matters. And if you do have specific questions about individual students or staff, I'd ask that I'm happy to have those conversations, but I'd ask that we do those off of this space just so that we can make sure that we're abiding by sort of confidentiality and those expectations. And then the last is to continue to build relationships and community. And I told some of you last time, I have a mentor who was a superintendent for a long time and did a thing called Cookies with Carl. He does podcasts with EdSource now. His name is Carl Cohn, and he does all these education podcasts in California, and he's a great guy. But his thing was Cookies with Carl, and it's just an opportunity again to do these things. So I stole that from him. All right, let's keep rolling. So we looked at these last time. These are the goals that we have for this year. We have 6 goals that we set as a cabinet, and then we also discussed these with the school board this summer. And these are just our goals for this year. Some of these goals are showing up differently this year, like the restorative and equitable communities one, where we're looking at suspending fewer African-American students with disabilities, and students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Just because fewer students are in school, so our suspension rates are down very significantly. And so this is really a way to get us thinking about and working as a district toward measurable goals that we drive toward in our day-to-day work and that we continue to communicate out. So those are the 6 goals: focus on early literacy, middle grades, literacy in math, access to high level learning for all students, and diversity of our staff, and restorative and equitable communities. And we're going to do a strategic plan this spring, and we'll have deeper engagement around what the community and the board and the district want to see as our goals moving forward in the next 5 years. So just wanted to give you some updates on some of the stuff that we're thinking about and that's on my radar that I thought would help for you all to hear, and I'm sure we'll want to talk about some of these things. So last night the board passed our budget proposal. The budget, they had asked us, the board asked us to be to look for savings where we could, and to not cut any programs, to not cut programs. And that was really helpful for us as we did our planning as a cabinet. My cabinet is all the principals and the directors and executive directors, and so we looked at some areas that we could find savings. One of those was in vacant paraeducator positions. Another is in central office budgets, sort of everyone doing with a little bit less in their central office kind of supplies budgets, not personnel. This is all materials and supplies, and I think we'll be able to do that just fine. And then small amount for central office. I'm sorry, for stipends that we were giving for support in the lunchroom. So those were really modest. They were less than we as a cabinet thought that we could do initially, but we wanted to make sure we didn't impact programs, and we really wanted to make sure we weren't impacting schools and the services that we're able to provide students in schools. We're really fortunate that because of COVID and the and not being in buildings last spring and over the summer and even this year at the same capacity, we have a surplus of $6 million. We're taking about $4 million of that surplus and putting it toward the budget this year so that we're not increasing taxes above 7%. And we are going to keep about $2 million in reserve to continue to pay out for sort of a long-term budget strategy to be able to pay for rent for BTC and rent for the high school. We would have been in a great place if we didn't have those costs, but because of those costs, those will impact our budget for a number of years. But I feel good that we've got strategies to be able to deal with that. And that puts the projected increase in the equalized pupil spending at about 8.89%. I think the big question that people usually have around this is the impact on taxes, and so the impact is a 6.88%. When we first did the initial projection, if we had just continued business as usual without anything, doing any of this other work, we were at 13% or 12.8%. So we were able to get it down below 6.88%. We've got.
You want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's keep going to the next one.
Sorry about that.
No problem. A lot going on with BHS. So we were sad just to receive the resignation of Principal Green, and I'm genuinely wishing him well as he moves on to his next step. And we moved right away to get leadership situated and in place with Lauren McBride as the acting principal and Gail Botello as the acting assistant principal. Lauren is the current assistant principal and Gail is currently supporting the high school. I had detailed Gail to the high school this year she was already working at the high school, but I added more time for her to the high school to support with the transition to downtown BHS. So we named these two individuals as acting, and then we have posted the interim principal position. And that's a position that we post internally. So it's only open to people in BSD who have the administrator's license. And that position is posted for 10 days, and then we'll hire and name an interim principal. That interim principal will receive a contract that lasts until the beginning of next school year. So it will go probably until August of next school year of 21, August 2021. And then we will also in the next week or two, or probably 2 weeks, post for the full principal position, which will begin in August of 2021. And that'll be a national search, and we'll be working with staff and students and community on that over the course of the spring. Downtown BHS, the construction's continuing. The walls are now starting to, you see here on the pictures what it looked like over the winter break. Now there's sheetrocking on the walls, and it's really starting to come together as a school, which is wonderful to see. We're creating schedules for students for the hybrid model. So it would be based on where we are public health wise, we would still be in an A-B day model at the high school when we started on March, in that first or second week of March. The construction's still due to be completed on February 22nd. Then we move in, and so what we're aiming for is that classes begin on the second half of the first week of March. We are going to be reaching out specifically to families of students with IEPs and students who are English learners to work through and develop a program that gives support both in person and or virtual, depending on the parent, what families want, to provide learning beyond in-person learning of some sort beyond 2 days. So all students get in-person, face-to-face 2 days, and then they're in remote 3 days for students with IEPs and students who are learning English. In our elementary and middle schools, those students have been offered 4 days a week, and we're going to do the same with our high school students. And then the leadership team is really excited actually for this work. I mean, it's a big lift and it hasn't been easy, but they're very positive, and I feel very confident in their leadership and the direction they're wanting to take the school this spring. And so I'm feeling, I was there just now. I'm feeling really good about the work that they're doing. And we're going to have a couple town halls in the upcoming weeks to talk through all things BHS, and those will be led by the BHS leadership team.
Tom, we got one more slide. That's 10 minutes, but I think the next slide is pretty important too. Just for people on the call, once you present your last slide and we get into our question and our conversation time, one thing that we would like people to think about today, and if we could get some feedback from you today around these town halls, these are 2 questions for you all. What are you excited about in downtown BHS, and what questions, if you were to attend one of those town halls, what would be a question or 2 that you would need to see addressed during that time? So we're trying to just put those town halls together in a way that is information that you all want and need. So we'd like your feedback today, if you're willing to provide that, and if not, you can email it separately to myself or to Victor following today.
So we are still in a pandemic, and we're still working through what it means to be running schools and a school system during a pandemic. And I'm really proud of the work our staff and our leaders have done. It's in a stressful time. I think the one thing that we continue to hear from the Department of Health and from the governor and from the numbers that we're seeing is that while we do have cases in schools, our schools are safe, and we're not seeing much at all transmission within school. And one of the things we did after break is we doubled down on the questions that we were asking students and staff before they came, because it was, both students and staff, we needed to kind of be checking their health a little more carefully, doing kind of the self-check. And so we've doubled down on that. Still, we're working really closely with the Department of Health on every case, any case that we learn about in our schools. We get a phone call from the Department of Health. We bring the school principal and our COVID coordinator, who is a school nurse, Becca McCrae over at Edmonds Middle School, to a meeting with the Department of Health. We develop a line list of anyone who could be a potential close contact, and then we narrow that line list down to who were the potential close contacts, and those are people who were within 6 feet of one person who may have who was positive for 15 minutes or longer over the course of a day. So it could be 4 separate 5-minute intervals, and you'd be considered a close contact, as well as 15 minutes at a time. And then we reach out to those individuals who are potential close contacts. They stay home and get a test, and then we message out to the school, and we've been mostly closing classrooms, not 100%, because sometimes the situation just doesn't require that the whole classroom shut down. But in other cases, we've had to shut down multiple classrooms. So it really just depends on what, what's happening with that individual case. And our team has, I think, been doing a really good job of staying on top of that and communicating and managing those cases in a way that's thoughtful and efficient and also supportive. And we're learning from it too. We have a teacher who had she quarantined and her class quarantined, and they have a list of recommendations that we're going to put in our community update and float around for students. So if students are quarantining from another class that had to quarantine, kind of what they might be thinking about and some advice for them, which is really a great thing. And so these are the things we're saying, asking people to continue to do their part. I think we are, as a community, doing our part and doing a great job of doing our part, and that's allowed us to keep schools open. So we're working on a dashboard that is BSD specific to make sure that we're communicating out all the cases. Sort of with this, there's always a risk, or we always want to balance making sure people have the information that they need, making sure our community has the information that they need about what's happening, and not overly providing unnecessary anxiety. So there's all this balance and maintaining confidentiality. So that's part of what we're doing, but we're going to begin putting out a weekly update on our COVID cases. And so you can see the number of cases since our last update on the 29th is 12, which is 12 from since the return of break across 8 different locations. And the overall total cases are 38 in our school cases. And that's across 11 locations. We're also doing testing participation. We're also, testing, offering testing. And so we've had a couple of rounds of testing to offer to our faculty. So those are the big updates. I think the only last thing that's sort of related to this that I didn't mention is that vaccines are the prioritization. The state has decided to prioritize vaccines on age, which was a frustration for schools, across the state, and personally for me, because I was hopeful that we'd get vaccinations for teachers, and that would really help with all this. But after listening more to Dr. Levine and Secretary French and the governor, they're prioritizing life, and so it's hard to argue with that. We're seeing that people who are over a certain age or have specific pre-existing conditions are those people who are most significantly impacted and have and die more often, and so they're prioritizing life, and so I think we just have to sort of trust in their decision making. This is what we've done throughout, is trust in the decision making of the health professionals. I'm a school person and a school professional, and I need to let the health professionals do their work too. So that's where we are there. Although I sure wish we could get everyone vaccinated as soon as possible, but not the case. So I think that's it. We can open it up, right? Did I miss anything, Russ?
I sent you a message, but I think that's the gist of everything that we talked about. Yeah, no, you got it all. It was longer than 10 minutes this time, though.
Yeah, sorry about that. And it may not be weekly, is what the message that Russ sent me. It may be, we're sending out a week, about a bi-weekly or every week and a half community update, as you all know. So it'll be in those community updates. And
that's the dashboard that we're talking about. We want to make sure that we get this to you regularly, and we'd like to get it to you weekly, but there's a lot of things going on in the school district. So the goal right now is to include it every time Tom does a community update to everybody. We'll put this at the bottom, sort of how we did it during the spring of last year, where we had a dashboard at the end of all those community updates last year. So we'd be open to feedback on this too, making sure that we don't want to just give you information that that you don't want or you don't need. So you can feel free to talk about that today, or if you think about that, you can email me directly. Our goal, as Tom said, in this whole thing is to be transparent and open, and to give people the information that they need, but also to allay fears and not cause any unnecessary anxiety. So thanks for letting me talk.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, questions? I see your hand up, but I don't know your name. I'm sorry. If you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Marnie Slavic.
Hi, Marnie. How are you?
I have 2 kids, 5th and 8th grade, both at Edmonds Elementary and Middle. Okay. And my question to you today is when you intend to change elementary schools to 5 days a week instead of 4? When I had my conference with my teacher, Andrew Stiles, in November, he mentioned that we were going to try to transition to 5 days. I understand that the high schoolers are using the spaces now, which I support, but I'm hoping that we can have an advanced plan to get the kids back to 5 days a week ahead of time, rather than once we transition the high schoolers in, because they are losing 20% by being out on Wednesdays.
Yeah, so I appreciate the push there. I do think the push is helpful. We were planning, and we had started having conversations about going back to 5 days a week in elementary school back in November, late November, early December. Andrew is the head of the Burlington Association, and he's an awesome teacher and a great partner. And he always wants to be in school, you know, which I just so appreciate about him. And I was feeling like we were in a really good place to start to have those conversations, because the reason we stayed in 4 days a week originally was because we have an MOU with the BEA, the Burlington Educators Association, to allow for a balance so that they would be able to put in extra time Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday to do some of the duties around morning screenings and lunch. And there were just a lot of extra duties. And so one of the agreements we had from the beginning was that we would have that Wednesday be a remote day with a chunk of time for professional learning and planning and all that stuff. I think it's time. I think it's probably time for us to revisit that now. And so I'll do that. I'll do that. I meet with them once every other week, and I'm going to bring that back up. It became a harder conversation when we started having cases. So we were doing so great. We had no cases, and districts all around us were having cases. And it was probably a curse. I started talking about it and everyone said, stop talking about it. But I knew at some point we were going to probably have cases. And so we had to also celebrate the success of getting through a large chunk of the whole fall and part of the winter without cases.
But I think what we gain by moving from 4 to 5 days is a lot. And what we lose by staying at 4 days is also a lot. So getting the push back to 5 days means a lot for the kids and the families. And it's not going to be that different for the teachers who are. Yeah. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up. I'm going to bring it back to my next meeting with the BEA and start to have that conversation. I think it's hard on families. I have second graders, and they, Wednesday is just I'd rather them be in school on Wednesday.
We don't need it to be a lost day for the rest of the year. And we can plan to get in there as soon as the high schoolers are back in.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And then one other just real quick thing, because you asked for feedback on the dashboard. The thing that sticks out to me as a data scientist is the surveillance testing numbers. You might want to represent those as a percentage rather than a raw number, because people are going to ask, like, what percentage of your staff and faculty is that? So that's my feedback to you on that. I think you're going to get a lot of questions about those numbers. So you also might want to consider leaving them off and just represent them as number of positive, cases identified through surveillance testing. Another idea.
You think the surveillance testing will elicit lots of questions?
I do.
Those numbers specifically.
Yeah. Okay. I think the answer is 0 to that question, in case you're
wondering. Then I would definitely include that data.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is 0. We had 2 false. They weren't called false positives, but in my mind, there are false positives in the first round. There was a contamination in the testing, and two people showed as positive who weren't.
Okay.
And then the second one, we haven't had any. Right.
So you could put percentage tested and number of cases identified through surveillance testing, 0.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm done.
All right. Hi, Valerie.
Hi, I'm in a public place, so can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of background noise here. So I wanted to follow up on Marnie's point. You know, my kids are in high school, 9, 11, and 12th grade. And we talked last time, but I'd like to talk again about the idea of going from 2 to at least 3, if not 4 days. I'm hearing the governor talk, once with Macy's, I'm hearing the governor talk about going to 4 days in April is what my memory serves from the last press conference. Obviously, you know, pending how COVID goes, but if things continue to move in the right direction. So 3 or 4 days at Macy's, wondering about that.
So I have talked to the BHS leadership team and I've asked them to think about how we can plan for more than 2 days and how because there's been such lost learning time. You know, anecdotally, in kind of the street data I'm getting, talking to students, I think I've talked to probably 15 students so far, specifically about how's it going with remote versus in person. And only one of those 15 students has told me that they are, that remote learning is working for them. I bet, I don't know what the numbers will be overall. I bet there is one in a certain number, you know, for whom remote learning is working. And so I think we kind of need to learn from that and be aware of that. But also it shows us it shows me the importance of in-person learning. And so I think we need to try to gain time back. And the leadership team agrees with that and is open to that and open to leading that conversation. What it really takes is conversation at the school level with leadership team to say, and teachers to say, you know, what could work? How could we use, how could we kind of staff and structure our schedule so that we could have students in more than 2 days a week. So right now it's still the A day, B day model, but I did in our last meeting, which was yesterday, I asked them to think about, and to really start thinking hard about how to get students back more than just those 2 days a week.
Yeah, I think to Marnie's point, it's critical to have kind of a plan A, plan B, so that when we can do it, it gets rolled out versus kind of figuring it out then. A follow-up on that too is there's a rumor going around that they're talking about just 4 days for next school year. And I wonder, is that true, and why, and what can we do about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about that for next year. Next year, my hope is that vaccinations are out and we're in 5 days a week. The only reason we wouldn't be able to be in school 5 days a week, or we wouldn't be out of this hybrid model, is if we were unable to achieve the distancing. So in high school, the area where the biggest challenge is the 6 foot distancing, where you have to create 6 feet distance between all individuals, essentially, in the way you structure the classrooms. It doesn't mean you're always 6 feet apart, but when you're laying out a classroom, you know, you have to be able to achieve that 6 foot distancing. So if those rules are still in place and we're still in that step 2 of the guidance, and you know, then you know, we probably would need to still be in hybrid. But my hope and goal would be that we're not in hybrid next year and that we're back to school 5 days a week. And we've learned from this experience. I think there's learning from this experience that we need to take seriously, but that we also are back to sort of business as usual in some ways too.
Just to make sure I understand, because the Macy's has the capacity to have everybody one time.
Yep.
6 feet apart or whatever.
Well, the issue is not if they're required to be 6 feet apart. So none of our schools if you're required, this is why in middle school, we're still only 2 days a week, because the only way you can achieve the 6 feet is by having not all the students in school at the same time.
I see. So when the governor talks about April, it's moving to a new phase, which doesn't require that. I see. I understand.
Exactly. That's anywhere in the state, unless there are very small schools with lots of space, which there are some of, but not very many. And I thank you for bringing that up too, Valerie. Part of this will end up, we're on a, had we not had the issues with the PCBs, we were projected to be on the same schedule type as, you know, South Burlington and Essex and Colchester and all the Champlain Valley Superintendents Association schools. So we'll continue to have alignment with other schools in the region too. And that's been really helpful for me, because then the decision's not fully, the weight isn't on my shoulders. It's a shared decision, and they want to get back too. I mean, they all want to get back. So you've got, you know, about 12, 13 superintendents who all want to be in person as much as possible. So that's been helpful, and we'll work with that group to make those decisions, but we'll ultimately make our own decision. Kelly.
Hello, I was about to say good morning. It's not good morning anymore. Good afternoon. On the flip side, I get that the majority of people want to be in person. For those students that are remote and are thriving and succeeding in ways that they were never doing in person, is that going to remain an option? I don't want to see my son lose ground going in person because he's forced to when he's making so many gains at home.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to work with individual families who are seeing success with being in remote. It's going to be hard because we have a limited number of people, of teachers, you know, and so we staff for one model, essentially. In high school, we will continue to use VT-VLC, the Vermont, what is it?
I haven't heard positive feedback about that collaborative around special education. However, the accommodations don't seem to be able to be built into the system. And so that would worry me as a parent whose child does utilize special education. Right.
Yeah. And it would just be for high school too. I think we're going to have some serious thinking to do around this. What I'm anticipating is that the majority of the program that we're going to provide is going to be in person. And we're going to be going back to the model that we had before last March. But what I don't want to do is just go back in without conversations with individual families who are having success, or students who are having success in this model. So, you know, I want to.
It's truly not just my special education student. My younger son is doing awesome as well. Like, I honestly wish this could be our whole school experience the whole way through, because they are nailing it, and so are their classes. So I get a little disheartened when I hear people say the kids are losing ground, when they're not losing ground. They're gaining in different ways. We just have to shift our perspective. We can't gauge on what was 2 years ago. We have to gauge on what is now.
Yeah. I mean, I think the issue is that there genuinely are students who are losing ground right now in this model, and we can tell by attendance, by their literacy scores are not where they were at the same point this year on our formative assessments that we do throughout the year, their math scores on those formative assessments that we do. So I'm really worried about our students and how we kind of get them back as soon as possible and work on this recovery. So the state is going to be working on, they're going to ask every district to have a recovery plan. And so we're sort of waiting on the guidelines of that, but they're going to ask each district to have a plan for how they're calling it recovery, but how for recovery, and ask every district to have a position that is charged with coordinating those efforts. So that's going to be a big piece of the work that we need to think about. And I think, to your point, Kelly, it's not as simple as we just need to get everyone back in person and keep rolling. We have to think about each individual family's circumstance and really be thoughtful about how we're working with families as we move to the next stage. And, you know, to Valerie's question, I've heard some of the rumors, both that we're going to be back in April or that we're not going to be back in the fall. I think, you know, my goal is that we're back in the fall, but there's still so much unknown. You know, there's a lot out there that could, you know, shift our thinking. So I just really want you to know that I'm aware that that you and other families are enjoying the remote experience for their children, and I've talked to a couple students who are also enjoying it themselves. So we need to keep that in mind as we think about moving forward.
And one other thing was, you know, I've been hearing, for those that don't know, I am also a district employee, but I am here as a parent today.
Okay, but you can be both today.
I can be both today.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I am home on leave, and my paraeducator position is currently considered vacant. And so the unanimous vote of eradicating or eliminating vacant para positions makes me personally wonder if I do have a job to come back to in the fall, should my family make that decision. But with that being said, the staff outages that are occurring throughout our schools every day make me worry. You know, I don't have to worry about it because my children are at home, but if I were sending them in and I got to receive notification of, hey, we have 20 staff out today, that would change my judgment on whether or not I would send my child in, especially my child utilizing special education, because that's a huge zigzag. That could potentially mean his special educator out, his favorite teacher out, his paraeducator out. And I'm wondering if that could be some of the information that is sent out to parents so that we actually have the ability to make these choices in a way where we have the information. You know, sending your child to a school with a fully staffed building, you don't think twice about it. Not having 22 adults in that building, that puts a different feeling. You know, it reduces the feeling of safety, it reduces the feeling of stability. And I just think that might help parents make decisions that they might not have made because they didn't have that information, which could also, for those that can, and, you know, keep their kids home, that can lessen the workload for the staff that's stretched ridiculously thin, covering 4 or 5 different roles throughout the day.
Yeah. So the first question about the paraeducator position. So we are planning to eliminate 10 to 12 vacant paraeducator positions in the budget for next year. Those positions are not positions that are currently filled, or where there's someone who's in that position who's on a leave of some sort. They're genuinely just positions that we've carried year over year in order to be able to provide specialized services if they're needed on an IEP. And we're still keeping positions back to be able to do that, but we don't need as many as we had been holding. And a lot of that's attributed to the decline in elementary enrollment. So our elementary enrollment numbers have gone down, but we also we don't want to cut deeply, because we know that we believe that much of the decline in our enrollment is related to the policies around immigration of the previous administration. So we're anticipating a trend up in enrollment over the next couple of years. So we just need this was just a balancing act, but it was not to cut any programs or any positions that there was currently someone in or someone on leave in. These are just positions that we've carried that we haven't had to fill. They're not positions that we posted and we couldn't fill, or we weren't trying hard enough to fill, or weren't recruiting. They're just positions that are there in case we needed them.
Okay.
And then your second question was, so attendance has been Staff have been very, very good about attendance this year. So that has been something that I'm really pleased with. And at the same time, attendance has been really challenging because of the need to stay home if you have a symptom or two. So we've asked people, really, please stay home. We've had people who've tried to force it to come in, right? Because that's naturally what we've always done, right? We kind of, I have, a little thing going on, but I can make it to work. But these days you can't, and so that's been part of it. Part of it is also quarantining. So I'm not sure, you may be referring to Hunt, but Hunt had a number of people out recently, and that was because we had to quarantine across a couple of classes. And so that ended up meaning we had to quarantine a bunch of staff members. And that just creates major challenges. It wasn't classroom teachers, but for the most part, although there were a couple of classroom teachers in that case, but it wasn't classroom teachers as a whole. But staffing has just been a real challenge because of that. But I want to make sure that you all hear too that our staff attendance has been good. It's just that we do have these extenuating circumstances that just make it really challenging. Valerie.
I'm wondering how the teachers are feeling about moving into Macy's. I know they're excited to see the kids, and my kids' teachers have been unbelievable. I often hear their classes happening, and I'm so impressed. But I have heard a few little rumblings about either just the change in what the building's going to be able to provide for their particular area, let's say science labs, for example, or their equipment and things that they own that are sitting in Building E that they haven't been able to access or move over to Macy's, that kind of thing. So just generally, how are teachers feeling, and do you feel like it's going to be a good approximation for kids like my youngest who are going to have 3 years there, or possibly 3 years there, a good approximation of the opportunities academically, whether it's the smart boards or the lab equipment or what?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. I was at the school today, and I checked in with a couple teachers just informally and asked them what they were thinking. And one of the teachers said, "Yeah, I'm excited to be in person." And he told me he didn't realize how much he was missing being in person until he got in person on Wednesdays. And he said, I've lost a lot of my kids over the course of the year. And when I see them in person now, you just see students differently when you're teaching. You can see the light bulb, right? When something clicks for a student. And so, he said that, and that really struck me. And he said, yeah. And then I said, "Oh, what are you worried about?" And he said, "Well, I want to make sure there are whiteboards." So there's some of those pieces. I mean, we're gonna number one, make sure that the building has the basic necessities to run when we get in there. And we know that once we get in, there may be some things that we need to do to bolster the program once we're in. So more, and I think there's a little bit of communication that we need to do with staff around this right now too, because we've been meeting with the BHS leadership team. There's a task force of district office and BHS leadership. And we've added additional doors. So there were lots of classrooms without doors. We've added doors on a lot of the classrooms, and we did add whiteboard. It's not whiteboards. It's like a whiteboard wall. So it's like kind of tape that goes on the wall that is a whiteboard, and you can write on that. And we've added bathrooms, a couple of bathrooms, just so that there's enough. We came in with enough by code, and the school said, we need, a few more for, other, just kind of specific reasons around running a school. And then we also, I don't know exactly where we landed, but we'll communicate this out. We've been working really closely with the people who do specific programming that require different things in the facility that help them run their program. So chemistry, the sciences have been a big one. So we're either going to add a lab or two of that would be there are chem labs, so that the classes wouldn't be in those rooms, but the teachers would be able to reserve the rooms and be able to use those labs. And we'll be bringing we'll be either outfitting those rooms and also bringing materials over from the high school when we move over. And then band and music, chorus were questions. And I think we have good solutions there. There are some rooms that are kind of back in back corners where the walls do go to the ceiling. And there's some bigger spaces for those classrooms. So we do have, I think we have a good solution there. And I think there's a major opportunity for partnerships for, I don't know, I'm new here, but Flynn Theater and just all the partnership opportunities that are down there. And the last thing I'll say is we talked to the Burlington City and Lake folks, and we are thinking and we're planning on how we can expand that programming so that we will continue with the BCL experience and the BCL model, but also bring some of the learning and the types of learning that students are doing around BCL down into the sophomore year and up into the senior year. So there's a planning group that we met 2 weeks ago on that, and we're just excited about the deep learning, opportunities that are there that we can really capitalize on, where we have some strong programming going on and we can build off of that. And I actually got a text from a teacher leader the other day who said, Tom, this is like, let's do this. Maybe not everyone's going to want to do it, but there's so many opportunities for deeper learning, for project-based learning, experiential learning, that I think are always there to a certain extent, but being downtown just gives us more access. Homeschoolers. Got it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking even, we have a lot of families who send students to Crow's Path and other sort of experiential outdoor learning. I want to offer that here. I mean, I'm fine with, I don't know those programs, but I like them, and I want to be able to do that here too. I think we need to think about that long and hard. Hi, Gail. Yep.
I've got the unmute figured out finally. So what's my question? Oh, just as far as Macy's goes, I have a high schooler, and it's gonna be so great to be back. He's somebody who in-person learning really does work for. And so we're glad that the school district is offering that opportunity. So I've got a couple of questions. First, and I apologize if you addressed this already, I had to come in late, but when the high schoolers started going to Edmonds, we actually lost instructional time because we had to still have a day that was not scheduled, I guess, and then they get a half day. So I just wondered, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure there's complexities of the contracts with teachers, but why did we still have to reduce, like they have one less day of instruction and now they only have 3.5 days of instruction in a year. And so, well, in a week. So I'm concerned about that on several levels, but I guess my first question is why did that have to happen? And then secondly, what are we doing going forward? Like next semester, for example, my son is in Algebra 2 and his teacher initially, I said, well, second semester he's in pre-cal, right? So he's getting the opportunity to do 2 math, which is, one of the positives, I guess. But initially the Algebra 2 teacher said, oh, wait, you didn't really get a full Algebra 2. Like normally we go through, I forget, 7 units or something, and we've gone through 4 or something like that. So she was saying, well, wait, you should have a full Algebra 2 before you go into pre-cal because you really need the Algebra 2 to get there. And I'm like, how are we possibly going to do that with nobody is getting the amount of curriculum that they should be getting in order to advance to the next level of the class? And I just don't know, where does that start and end? I mean, obviously everyone's got some catch up to do, but how do we make that happen?
So for me, sort of student and adult mental health and wellness, and students being able to get through the curriculum are the 2 biggest issues for me of COVID, of operating during a pandemic. that I don't think any of us have great answers for right now. But there are things that we need to really plan for as we move into the getting back into person, and as we think about how we utilize our time to catch students up. So there's sort of general catch up. So this is the experience of across the country and across all the schools in our district and in all the classrooms in our district. The question is, you know, we have our standards that we have to get through. How do we get through all the standards? So for high school specifically, we ended up with a half day because we ended up with half days because we needed to have A day and B day, and we needed to get everybody in. And in order to get to that agreement, I had to agree to keep a day of an asynchronous day, so that there could be office hours with individual touch points, and so that there was time for planning and you know, that was just a part of the deal that we made, and it was hard to get there, but that's really the reality of how we landed on that decision. I will say that while our students are only face-to-face 3 days a week, we are actually face-to-face more often than our neighboring high schools, because the neighboring high schools are A day, B day, with a Wednesday remote day. So we actually have a little bit more face-to-face time than our local colleagues in high schools around the region. But we're all dealing with the exact same issues of how do we make sure that our students are getting all of the Algebra 2 that they need before they move on. And I wish I had a better answer. I think there are a couple things. I mean, one of the things we've been thinking about is working in the scheduling to loop students so that they're with the same teacher who knows where they landed and where they will need to go. That's a little easier in elementary school. In high school, it's more challenging just because there are different maths, right? It's particularly challenging in math and science. And so they sort of by nature are probably different teachers. So I think we need to make sure that we need to think about classes a little bit differently as we move into the next semester and think about how classes are connected. So if we have a group of students who were in Algebra 2 and then are going into pre-calc and they are following a similar trajectory, that those teachers need to collaborate on where they landed and what students need as they move into the next subject. But it's incredibly complicated and frustrating to me because I'm a real curriculum person and I just don't, there are not great answers right now to those questions. And so for me, I just want to get us back in person as soon as possible so that we can just get that time back. So I apologize. That was it was a long answer and not a very good answer.
Well, I understand, and getting back in person really is, our priority, and I appreciate that. And I want to circle back to the VTVLC comments that people have made. And so I think regardless of COVID and PCBs, scheduling at BHS is an issue. My son came into the year with 2 classes in his schedule, not 4. And, I pushed to find another class, and that was a deal. Like I had to meet with his, his guidance counselor a number of times. She had to search a number of different scenarios. And as it was, we got one more class. And then the attitude was, well, we have VTVLC, you can always do that. And I'm like, okay, remote learning is not one of the things that's going to work for my child. And so we gave it a try. And unfortunately, this was, and I don't know if they're all like this, but this was a very, you can submit your assignments whenever you want. You just have this amount to do for the semester to get this credit and, do it at your own pace. did not work for my kid.
Right.
I mean, we learned a lot in the process. As a parent, I had to do a lot more hands-on, management of his learning than I would with a high schooler. And I mean, he finally finished the class, but they said, well, you have until March. And I'm thinking, my kid's going to wait until March 1st and then do it.
Right.
And then he's going to be in second semester. And then,
yeah.
So I just feel like high school students, and mine is probably not the only one, needs someone to make them accountable. They need assignments that are due on a certain time. They need a teacher who's going to check in with them. So I'm like thumbs down on the VTVLC. I really don't think it's the best way to educate our students. And I don't think it's a good alternative when parents are saying, there's not enough classes for my child to take. And I don't know if it's this lack of teacher or hours, or like, what is it? Why can't a student look at the course catalog, pick a course, I want to take that, and then get it on their schedule? Like, I just, maybe I'm too simplistic, but I don't understand why that should be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely a lot of complexities to it, but one of the things that you should know, just in as we did the scheduling, we had to reschedule the building in July, and that is almost an impossible task, and so that just threw things into some chaos as the rescheduling was happening, and that was because of the shift to the hybrid schedule. I think the school counseling team, Meg Hugcart and her team, are doing a really good job, but I also know there's still work, to improve there, and Meg would say the same thing. Part of the challenge has been that we moved from, in that change of scheduling, we moved to half-year courses. So the A day, we used to have courses spread across 2 days instead of across 2 semesters, and so the holes in those schedules are more prominent when it's every day than I think they probably were in the past. And then there are issues. There are reasons for. There are requirements about the numbers of students that teachers can teach within a day, and so classes can fill. This is something we talked about with our leadership team yesterday, and there's no space left in classes. All those are sort of reasons. They're not acceptable reasons. None of them are acceptable reasons to me. There's no reason that we should be carrying, half-filled schedules. That's just not acceptable to me. So that's something that we're going to work to address.
I appreciate that. It's good to hear you say that. This was an issue, to my understanding, before you arrived, before COVID arrived, before PCBs arrived. So it's just something I'm glad that you're taking as a priority, because it's persisted for a number of years.
We need, one of the issues is we need more offerings, and so that's something that we're talking about with the BCL and Burlington City and Lake, and providing other class options for students beyond just the requirements. Like, we're sort of, I think, meeting the requirements for the most part, right? Or not for them. We're meeting the requirements and a little, but we need to be able to offer more courses.
Yeah, offer more courses if you can staff them, make them available. You know what I mean? Right.
But yeah, it might need staffing. So I've got to run. Why don't I take, Valerie, one more question, and then I'll have to head off.
I think she actually said she was going to run. So
okay.
I have to run.
Okay.
I didn't have another question, but thank you so much for offering these. It's really valuable. I'm going to
Thank
spread
you,
the
Valerie.
word. I think there should be a much bigger turnout.
Well, there won't be an inauguration in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Come
Thanks,
and remember, 11:30. I think that's February 3rd. We're going to be a half hour earlier, and we'll promote it. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Kelly. Good to see you all. Hi, Tom Peterson.
And for people still on the call, Valerie has my information. But if you had other feedback to provide on this stuff, you can go ahead and reach out directly to me, and we appreciate that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.